Hello, future enrolled agents. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Again, this is Eloisa. So before we begin, again, gusto ko magpasalamat uli sa mga patuloy ninyong pagsuporta dun sa channel. Dumadami na yung mga nagsasubscribe and nakaka-receive na rin ako talaga ng magaganda mga feedback. So yun, nagsiserve siya as inspiration sa akin para mas lalo pa akong ganahan sa paggawa ng mga tutorials. No, so before we begin, i-recap muna natin yung last topic. No, dun sa last na video, diniscuss ko basically yung filing statuses. No? So para at least ma-relate nyo siya dun sa topic natin today. No, so in my last video, na-cover natin that there are actually 5 different filing statuses. No? So recap, single, married filing jointly, married filing separately, head of household, at saka surviving spouse, no? Qualifying surviving spouse, so QSS. So in today's topic, we will be covering dependents naman. No? So ano naman yung relationship niya dito sa mga qualifying, dito sa mga filing statuses natin. Okay? Remind ko lang, no, yung mga hindi pa nakakapag-subscribe sa channel, no, if you can do so, that will be a big help. You can also promote it to your friends, to your colleagues, peers, no, para mas maraming makaalam nitong channel natin na to. And meron din tayong Facebook group, no, yung Enrolled Agents Academy, where you can ask me questions dun sa mga hindi natin mako-cover, or basically kung may questions kayo about this topic later on. No, meron din ako LinkedIn account. No, feel free to connect. No, I will be happy na mas dumami pa yung network natin para mas makapagtulungan pa tayo. Okay, so kung ready na kayo, let's begin. Okay, our topic is dependency relationships. Okay, learning objectives. At the end of each session, I'm expecting na malalaman niya, no, determine who a US citizen is, identify who a dependent is, and understand the test for claiming dependence. Okay, sino ba yung tinatawag na US citizen? Kasi syempre, all about US tax to. So we should know kung sino-sino ba yung US citizens. US citizen include an individual born in the United States, yung mga natural-born citizens. An individual whose parent is a US citizen, a former alien who has been naturalized as a US citizen, an individual who has been born in Puerto Rico, Guam, or the US Virgin Islands, no, yung mga tinatawag natin na US possessions. Okay? So, bakit importante na malaman natin to? No? Kasi sa pagpe-prepare natin ng tax, importante kasi, sabi dito, federal income tax rules apply to all US citizens, regardless where they live. No, basta US citizen ka, you're gonna be taxed at your worldwide income. Okay? So before, merong exemptions, although ngayon suspended pa. No? So what are exemptions? An exemption is a dollar amount that can be deducted from an individual's total income, thereby reducing the taxable income. Taxpayers may be able to claim 2 kinds of exemptions. Personal exemptions generally allow taxpayers to claim themselves and possibly their spouse. So ito yung may suspension. Dependency exemption allows taxpayer to claim qualifying dependents. Ayan. So suspension of personal exemptions. The deduction for personal exemption is suspended or reduced to 0 for tax years 2018 through 2025 by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, no, yung TCJA. Although the exemption amount is 0, the ability to claim an exemption may make taxpayers eligible for other tax benefits. So hanggang 2025. So hindi natin alam, no, who knows, baka magbago. No, usually kasi every now and then may mga changes sa rules. No, so until then, suspended, no, yung personal exemptions. Okay. Determining dependents. Ito na. Identifying and determining the correct number of dependents is a critical component of completing the taxpayer's return. The deduction for personal and dependency exemption, as mentioned earlier, is suspended for tax years 2018 and through 2025 by the TCJA. Although the exemption amount is zero, the ability to claim a dependent may make taxpayers eligible for other tax credits. For example, the following tax benefits may all be associated with the dependent. Nako-cover natin to sa mga susunod natin na topics, no? Child tax credit, additional child tax credit, credit for other dependents, earned income credit or EITC, earned income tax credit, yan tawag din sa kanya, child and dependent care credit, head of household filing status, and other tax benefits. Okay. Who are dependents? No? So may dalawang klase ng dependent. Dependents are either a qualifying child or a qualifying relative of a taxpayer. The taxpayer's spouse cannot be claimed as a dependent. Some examples of dependents include child, stepchild, brother, sister, or parent. Okay? So reminder lang, an individual who qualified to be claimed as a dependent may still be required to file a tax return if they meet the filing requirements. So as we go along to other topics, makikita nyo yan na kahit na kinlaim na sila as dependent, it doesn't mean na hindi na sila required na mag-file ng tax. So kung mamimit pa rin nila yung certain threshold, no, kung sino yung mga required mag-file, kahit na na-claim ka as dependent, pwede ka pa rin or required ka pa rin na mag-file ng income tax. Okay. So there are different types of tests, no, in determining dependence. Itong tatlo na to, kailangan lahat masatisfy. Kasi pag ito pa lang nag-fail na isa or dalawa or lahat hindi naipasa, no, hindi mo na pwedeng ituloy. Ibig sabihin hindi mo na pwedeng i-claim as dependent yung tao, no? So, ano-ano ba yung primary test na to? So sabi dito, to claim a person as dependent, the taxpayer must meet, the dependent must meet all three. Hinighlight ko to guys, no? All three, hindi pwedeng isa, hindi dalawa. So kailangan lahat na to ma-meet. No? So number 1, dependent taxpayer test. The taxpayer cannot qualify as a dependent of another person. So, hindi pwedeng double dipping. Na, kumbaga, kinlaim ka na nung isang taxpayer, tapos i-claim mo pa ulit. So, hindi. Hindi pwede yon. So, kailangan, kung dependent mo siya, hindi siya makiklaim ng ibang taxpayer. So, dependent taxpayer test. Joint return test. The taxpayer cannot claim as a dependent a married person who files a joint return. Unless the married person files the return only as a claim for refund. So kapag usually yan, may anak ka, pero nag-asawa na, no, hindi mo na pwedeng i-claim as a dependent yon unless, no, kasi usually magpa-file yan ng joint, married filing jointly or joint return. So unless yung married person na yon magpa-file lang sila only to claim a refund. Other than that, pag nag-file sila ng joint return, hindi mo na sila pwedeng i-claim as dependent. Citizenship or resident test. Okay? The dependent must be a US citizen. Yung kaninang minention natin, define natin kung sino yung US citizen ba. No? So, the dependent must be a US citizen, US resident alien, US national, or a resident of Canada or Mexico for some part of the year. So, again guys, itong tatlo na to, kailangan masatisfy lahat. Otherwise, hindi na tayo kailangang mag-proceed sa ibang test. No? Pag dito pa lang, hindi na pumasa, hindi na pwedeng i-claim, no, as dependent. Okay, so to proceed, okay, let me give you an example ng joint return test. Okay, By the way, guys, ito nasa publication lang 4491, no? You can always check in details. So, Ruth had no income, was married in November for the tax year. Ruth's husband had $30,000 income and had a filing requirement. Although Ruth's father supported her and paid for the wedding, he cannot claim her as a dependent because she's filing a joint return with her husband. Okay, yun yung sinasabi ko kanina na kapag usually, yun nga, mag-asawa, no, kahit na sinusuportahan pa ng parents, kung magpo-file sila ng joint return, hindi mo na rin or hindi na rin pwedeng i-claim sila as dependent. Okay? Ito naman, example to ng citizenship or residency test. Okay. Joanne, who is a U.S. citizen, adopted an infant boy from Cambodia who lived with her for the entire tax year. Even though Joanne's child is not yet a U.S. citizen, he meets the citizen or resident test because he was a member of Joanne's household for the entire year. Huh? So, pwede yon. So, pwede niyang i-claim yung adopted child, no? As long as, nasatisfy niya yung requirement. Sinabi, he was a member of Joanne's household for the entire year. Okay, so next. Okay, so again, there are two types of dependents. So, number one, qualifying child muna tayo. Okay? The test for qualifying child are more stringent. Ibig sabihin, mas mahigpit. Stringent than the test for a qualifying relative. These four tests must be met. So, in addition to the three primary tests, yung kaninang sinabi nating DJC, dependent, taxpayer test, joint return test, citizenship or residency test, kailangan masatisfy yung tatlo na yon plus itong apat na to para mag-qualify siya as qualifying child. So the tests for qualifying child are more stringent than the test for qualifying relative. These four tests must be met. So number one, relationship test. Okay? Number two, age test. Number three, residency test. Number four, support test. Okay? May mga instances, no, na lahat na yan, kumbaga parang yung bata or yung dependent pwedeng maklaim ng dalawa or mahigit pa, no, na taxpayer. So, meron tayong tinatawag na tiebreaker test. So, later on, makikita nyo, ano ba yung tiebreaker test na yan? Okay, relationship test. The qualifying child must be related to the taxpayer. Ito na naman yung by blood, marriage, or adoption. Ako ginagawa ko usually BAM. Para sa exam, no, nagagawa ko ng mga acronym para mas madali kong matatandaan. So ito, ang code ko dito, BAM. Blood, adoption, marriage. Okay. So sino-sino ba yon? A child, stepchild, or adopted child. So, hindi lang biological child ang tinatawag nating child or qualifying child. Pwede rin siyang stepchild. Kunyari, nag-remarry ka, no, yung partner mo, yung husband or wife mo, meron na siyang anak. So, stepchild mo. So, considered as qualifying child yon. Adopted child, no, yung mga, of course, legally adopted. Hindi yung basta na lang inampon mo. So, kailangan may paper siya, may proper procedure nag-undergo. So, can be considered as your qualifying child kung legally adopted child, no? So ito pa, brother, sister, half-brother, half-sister, step-brother, step-sister. So nung una guys, nalilito ko dito kasi syempre qualifying child tapos biglang may brother, may sister, no? So considered as qualifying child pa rin yan. So malawak ang sakop, no? Pag sinabi mong qualifying child, kasama to. So again, a child, stepchild, or adopted child. Dagdag mo pa yung brother, sister, half-brother, half-sister, step-brother, step-sister. So pagka yan, no, na-satisfy, no, ibig sabihin, pwedeng mag-qualify as qualifying child. Pwede pa lang ha, hindi ko sinasabing qualifying child agad kasi kailangan masatisfy again yung lahat ng rules, no, na sineset forth para ma-consider as qualifying child. Okay? And then, a descendant of one of the above, no, such as grandchild, niece, or nephew. No? So, kasama din yon. Pwede rin ma-consider as qualifying child. No? Foster child. No, usually, may mga nilalagay ng mga ng government or ng mga foster agency sa family. Again, basta may proper paper. No? So, makukonsider din yung foster child as qualifying child. Okay? So, that's number 1, relationship test. Susunod, age test. Okay? The child must be younger than the taxpayer or spouse if filing jointly and must meet one of the following conditions. Okay, number 1, younger than age 19 at the end of the year. So, ibig sabihin lang niyan, dapat 18 ka. No? Younger than age 19 eh. So, kumbaga, pag nag-turn 19 ka, kunyari yung birthday mo, no, 18 ka nang umpisa ng taon, tapos nung ang birthday mo, wari mo, December 30, nag-turn 19 ka, hindi na pwede yun. No, kasi younger than age 19 at the end of the year. Number 2, younger than age 24 at the end of the year and a full-time student. So, po pwede naman lumampas ng 19 or ng 18. Ibig sabihin, younger than 19 or over 18 for as long as full-time student. Okay, number 3, permanently and totally disabled at any time during the year, regardless of the age. Yun nga, kung may mga kapansanan, no? Hindi na nagmamatter kung anong edad mo or anong edad nung dependent. Basta, permanently and totally disabled siya during the year. Okay. Example. Okay, example to nung number 3. Tyler is 49 years old and mentally disabled with Down syndrome. Timothy, his 35 years old brother, provides all Tyler's support and takes care of him at home, where he lives with him full-time. Despite Tyler's age, 49 years old, he is considered a qualifying child and dependent for tax purposes because he is disabled. Timothy can claim Tyler as his qualifying child and he can also file as head of household. So kasi nga, si Tyler, kahit na 49 years old na siya, meron siyang Down syndrome. So, ibig sabihin nun, disabled siya, permanently disabled, na hindi niya kayang alagaan yung sarili niya. Okay? Permanently and totally disabled. Ito yung mas clear na definition. An individual is considered permanently and totally disabled if both of the following conditions apply. He or she can engage in any substantial gainful activity because of physical or mental condition. Kasi kailangan permanent and total, hindi po pwedeng partial lang. No, partially, kasi meron naman mga disabled guys na nakakapag-work pa rin. No, merong mga handicap na nakakapag-work pa rin. So, hindi ibig sabihin na porque handicap ka or meron kang kapansanan, automatic makiklaim ka. Hindi rin. So, kailangan, ang keyword natin dito, permanently and totally disabled. No? So, he or she can engage in any substantial gainful activity because of a physical or mental condition. Okay, number 2, a doctor determines the condition has lasted or can be expected to last continuously for at least a year or can lead to death. Kumbaga, prolong na yung disability niya. Or yun nga, can even lead to hanggang mamatay na, no, yung tao. No? So, yun yung condition. Yun yung definition natin pag sinabi nating permanently and totally disabled. Okay. Ito naman guys, definition ng full-time student. Ito nasa IRS. So, tingnan nyo na lang. No? Para at least mas malinaw. According to IRS, a full-time student is a student who is enrolled for the number of hours or courses that the school considers to be full-time attendance. A full-time student at school that has a regular teaching staff course of study and regularly enrolled student body at the school, or a student taking a full-time on a farm training course given by school described in number 1 or by state, county, or local government agency. The 5 calendar months do not have to be consecutive. Basta, kumbaga, full-time load ka. Nag-aaral ka ng regular na mga courses, no? Ito yung, kumbaga, parang reminder lang, note, no? Attending on the job training course, correspondence school, or school offering courses only through the internet, yung mga online, does not qualify a child as a student. So, minsan may mga nag-o-offer mga short-term courses or mga online courses. So, ito according sa definition ng IRS. So, if halimbawa may client kayo or nagpunta sa inyo, kiniklaim as dependent, no? More than 18 years old or above, ano na siya, 19 na, kumbaga. Pero, yun nga, sinasabi, student siya. Pero nung tinanong mo, ano ba yung inaaral, sinabi, nag-fall lang siya dito ng mga on-the-job training course or mga online courses lang na hindi included, no, dun sa definition ni IRS ng full-time student. So, ibig sabihin nun, X na siya dun sa age. No? Kasi, para mag-qualify, again, dapat hindi siya over ng 18. No? Hindi, kumbaga, parang ang benchmark is hanggang 18 years old ka lang. No? Pero kung mag-over ka ng 18 years old, kailangan full-time student ka. Okay? So, yun yun. Residency test. Okay. A qualifying child must have lived with the taxpayer for more than half. No? Laging yung more than half. No? So, pagka hindi more than half, no, may chance pa na hindi siya maging qualifying child. A child who is born or dies during the year qualifies if the home was the child's home the entire time and the child was alive. A child is considered to have lived with the taxpayer when at the hospital following birth or during temporary absence, during special circumstances such as illness, education, business, vacation, or military service. Nabanggit ko to nung last na, nung last na video. Merong mga kinukonsider as temporary absence. So, pagka may mga ganun situation, considered pa rin, kumbaga tumatakbo pa rin yung period na kinakount, no? Para masabing nakatira ka with the taxpayer. Okay? So, temporary absences lang yun. So, counted pa rin siya. Okay? If born alive but living for a moment or not stillborn, official documentation must prove live birth. Na-cover ko din to nung last na topic. No? Pwede pa rin i-claim as a qualifying child. Kunwari, yung client nyo, no? Yung taxpayer, buntis siya, nanganak siya during the year, no? Yung pinanganak niya, buhay naman yung pinanganak. No? Pero eventually, yun nga, nagkaroon ng complications, tapos namatay. So, considered pa rin yun as qualifying child. Kailangan lang ng proper support, no? Mga medical records, hospital records, no? Para ma-prove na talagang buhay ipinanganak, hindi stillborn. No? Yung stillborn kasi, kumbaga parang patay na sa sinapupunan pa lang. So, nung pinanganak patay. So, hindi na qualified yun. No? Hindi siya makukonsider as a qualifying child. Okay? Ang pwedeng gawin doon ng mga tax preparer, no? In the case of a child who was born and died during the year, so syempre hindi makakasecure yan ng Social Security Number or SSN. As SSN is not required but the return cannot be e-filed. The tax return must be mailed. So for more info, you can refer to Publication 17 for specific rules for this rare situation. So, pwede mo pa rin i-claim, no, as dependent kung buhay naman siya nung pinanganak. Kung hindi nakasecure ng Social Security Number, pwede rin naman. No? Kumbaga parang ilalagay mo lang doon, kumbaga parang may word na namatay yung bata. Tapos, ang kailangan, paper filing. Hindi mo siya po pwedeng i-e-file. Okay? Okay, example. Lorenzo is widowed and has an 8-year-old daughter named Lily. The child lived with his father all year and Lorenzo provided all of her daughter's financial support. On February 2, Lily was diagnosed with pediatric cancer and was hospitalized continuously for 10 months. Lily is still considered as Lorenzo's qualifying child because the hospitalization is considered as temporary absence from home. Lorenzo can claim Lily as his qualifying child and he can also file as head of household. So ito na, kahit na hindi mo kasama physically sa bahay, no, kasi nga may medical condition na nagpapa-hospital or naka-confine sa hospital, no, considered as qualifying child pa rin yon. Kasi nga nagpapagamot. So kumbaga considered as temporary absence lang yon. Okay? Support test. Okay, so ito naman. To meet this test, the child cannot have provided more than half of his or her own support during the tax year. This test is different from the support test for qualifying relative. A person's own funds are not support unless they are actually spent for support. Okay, ano ba ibig sabihin nun? Kung halimbawa may kinikita naman yung anak mo, no? Halimbawa, for some reason, yung bata merong trabaho, no? Minsan mga artista, nag-acting or merong commercial, ganyan, merong kinita, pero sinave, no? Kumbaga parang sinave ng parent sa bangko, ininvest, kumbaga. No? So, ibig sabihin nun, hindi ginamit ng bata yon to support himself or herself. Kumbaga, hindi ginamit sa pambili ng pagkain, ganyan. Anything para mabuhay ka, no? Or mabuhay yung bata, hindi ginamit doon, sinave. So, in that case, hindi yon considered as support. No? So, kahit na kumita yung bata. Okay? Foster parents may claim a foster child if the child is legally placed in their home by the courts or government agency. Payments received from a child placement agency for the support of the foster child are considered support provided by the agency rather than support provided by the child. So may nare-receive yan. So may ilalagay na kumbaga na foster child no, sa bahay ng taxpayer. May binibigay na parang you coming from the government, no, panggastos, ganyan. So, consider support yon ng government or ng agency. Hindi yung support na pinuprovide ng bata sa sarili niya. Okay? However, if a child receives a social security benefit, iba naman to, no, like yung survivor benefits and uses them for his or her own support, the benefits are considered to be provided by the child. So, magkaiba yon guys. So, iba yung naka-receive sila ng social security benefit, iba naman yung naka-receive ng support from the agency or from the government do sa mga foster child. So, yung isa, mako-consider as support ng bata sa sarili niya. Yung isa naman, hindi. Okay, so kailangan alam niyo yung distinction. Okay. Ano ba yung support? So, bago tayo magpatuloy, no? What is considered as support? The definition of support includes only income that is actually used for living expenses. A person's own funds are not support unless they're actually spent for support. For example, if a child earns income that is saved in bank account rather than spent on the child's living expenses, the amounts saved are not included in the support test. Okay, so yan yung kailangan naiintindihan nyo. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng support? So, hindi lahat ng kinita, kumbaga parang kino-considered as support kung hindi naman ginamit, no? Dun sa mga binanggit dyan. Dun talaga sa ng support. Like, for example, ginastos mo for recreation o yung mga R&R activities, so sa vacation, ganyan, travel, hindi support yon. Ang support is yung actually kailangan mo para mabuhay. Food, clothing, shelter, ganyan. No, yung primary needs, kumbaga. Okay? So, kailangan malaman natin, no? Kasi kailangan masatisfy at least more than 50%. So, merong worksheet na pwede natin gamitin. Yung mga gumagamit ng software sa tax, like Lazert, Drake, yan, meron silang computation. Pero kung mano-mano mo naman gagawin, para ma-determine mo if, for example, no, qualified siya na mag-claim ng dependent at siya yung sumusuporta, pwede mong gamitan ito, no, yung worksheet for determining support. Andun din to sa IRS publications, I think for 490. no? Para makita mo yung mismong buong form na to or buong worksheet, no? Para magamit mo. Okay? Example tayo. Bob, 22, is a full-time student and lives with his parents when he is not in the dorm. He worked part-time, trabaho daw, but did not pay over half of his total support. Bob meets the relationship, age, residency, and support test. So, yeah. Number 2. Doris, a U.S. citizen, is 8 years old. Ito yung kaninang related na sa sinabi ko. And had a small role in television series. She made $60,000 during the year. No? So, mga bata pa, nagtatrabaho na. But her parents put all the money in a trust fund to pay for college. She lived with her parents all year. Doris missed the relationship, kasi anak. No? Siyempre, anak siya, as in biological child. Age, no? Ano age ba niya? 8 years old pa lang. Eh. So, kumbaga, pasok pa siya dun sa age test. Residency test, no? Kapasok din siya. Doris also meets the support test since $60,000 in earnings, no? Kahit na kumita na siya ng malaki. Ang laking pera na nun, guys, no? Yung $60,000. Kaya lang, hindi naman niya ginamit for her own support. No? Kumbaga, nilagay ng parents niya sa trust fund. No? Para paglaki niya, gagamitin niya sa college. So, kahit na kumita siya, no? Pwede pa rin siyang i-claim ng parents niya as dependent. No? Qualified pa rin siya as a qualifying child because yung pera ginamit not for her own support. No? Nilagay ng parents niya sa trust fund. So, she meets the test for qualifying child, no? Because, ayun nga, no? Meron siyang, kumbaga qualified siya sa relationship, anak siya, age 8 years old siya, residency test, kumbaga within the year, kasama pa siya, no? And then yung support, no? Because yung pera na kinita, hindi niya ginamit for her own support. Okay? Can the child be a qualifying child for more than one person? Ito na yung kaninang binabanggit ko. Pwedeng, kumbaga, possible na may mga multiple na pwedeng mag-qualify. Pwede pa lang, guys. Hindi exactly sinabing agad-agad silang lahat, no? Nakalagay dito, although a child could meet the conditions to be a qualifying child of more than one person, only one taxpayer can claim the child as a qualifying child for the following tax benefits. Exception if the special rule for children of divorced or separated parents or parents who lived apart applies. So, pwedeng may mga qualified. No, pero hindi ibig sabihin nun, qualified meaning pwede nilang i-claim. The word is pwede. But the thing is, hindi nyo po pwedeng sabay-sabay na kayo ang mag-claim. Na isa lang, one at a time. Kumbaga, pagka na-claim na yun, hindi mo na-claim as dependent mo na yun, hindi na pwedeng i-claim ng ibang taxpayer. So, for the following, ayan, dependent, child tax credit or credit for other dependents, head of household filing status, credit for child and dependent care expenses, exclusion from income for dependent care benefits, earned income credit, premium tax credit, generally speaking. So guys, may separate video tayo dito, no, sa lahat ng mga credits, no, para mas maintindihan nyo ano-ano ba yung mga credits na yan. At saka, bakit hindi po pwedeng marami ang mag-claim, no, kahit na po pwede. Ibig sabihin, pwede naman nilang, kumbaga, qualified sila to claim that child as their child, but it doesn't necessarily follow na lahat sila po pwedeng mag-claim ng child tax credit. Lahat sila pwedeng mag-claim ng filing status na head of household, no? So, kailangan maintindihan nyo yan. Okay? So, ito naman, tax breaker rules. No? So, kung halimbawa yun nga, kung parehas na parehas lahat, pwede, pasok sa banga ika nga. No? Pero, syempre, kailangan merong, kahit sa contest, may tiebreaker. Okay? So, ito naman yun. No other person can take any of the 6 tax benefits, yung kaninang binanggit natin, no? Yung earned income tax credit, ganyan, dependent, child tax credit, yung mga yon, no? No other person can take any of the 6 tax benefits, no? Unless he or she has a different qualifying child. Hindi po pwedeng sa isang child lang nag-aagawan kayo. To determine which person can treat the child as a qualifying child to claim these 6 tax benefits, the following tax breaker rules apply. Subject to these tiebreaker rules, the taxpayer and any other person may be able to choose which person claims the child as a qualifying child. Okay. So number one, in order of ano to guys, alin ang mas matimbang? So by the child's parent, if they file a joint return. Okay? By the parent, if only one of the taxpayers is the child's parent. Minsan kasi yun nga, dalawa, o sino yung nanay, o sino yung tatay, sino yung parent. Okay? By the parent with whom the child lived the longest during the year. Nangyayari din to. Kasi may mga instances wherein hindi pa sila talaga divorce or hindi pa naghihiwalay legally speaking, no? So parehas, lalo na pag isa lang yung anak, guys, nangyayari talaga yan. No? So, yon, by the parent to whom the child lived the longest during the year. Number 4, by the parent with the highest AGI, or adjusted gross income. If the child lived with each parent for the same length of time during the tax year. So, kumbaga parehas na tigsi 6 months. Kung sino yung mas mataas yung income or sino yung mas mataas na AGI dun sa parent. Okay, siya yung pwedeng mag-qualify. Or, sorry, siya yung pwedeng mag-claim dun sa qualifying child na yon. Okay? By the taxpayer with the highest AGI if neither of the child's parents can claim the child as qualifying child. Okay? But last, by the taxpayer with a higher AGI than either of the child's parent who can claim the child as qualifying child but does not. Ibig sabihin, kumbaga, pwede ka namang mag-claim pero hindi mo kiniklaim. So, yung taxpayer na yun with a higher AGI than either of the child parents. So, pwede minsan yung mga grandparents, ganyan, kiniklaim nila yung mga apo-apo nila as dependent kung hindi kiniklaim ng parents. Okay? And sometimes, kung parehas nagkiklaim, kaya susundin tong in order of kumbaga kung sino mas matimbang. So, halimbawa, yung lola at yung mother, parehas silang qualified na mag-claim dun sa bata as a qualifying child. Priority yung nanay. Kung hindi magkiklaim yung nanay, yung lola, pwede niyang i-claim. Okay? Pero kung nagtatalo sila, maaaring hindi magkasundo, ang priority yung nanay. Siya yung may, kumbaga, rightful, kumbaga, siya yung una sa pila na po pwede mag-claim dun sa bata as qualifying child. Okay, example. Your daughter meets the conditions to be a qualifying child for both you, ito na nga, and your mother. Under the rules, you are entitled to treat your daughter as a qualifying child for all the 6 tax benefits listed, yung kaninang nauna natin binanggit. For which you otherwise qualify. Your mother isn't entitled to any of the other tax benefits listed unless she has a different qualifying child. However, if your mother's AGI is higher than yours, you can let your mother treat your daughter as her qualifying child. If you do that, your daughter isn't your qualifying child for any of the tax or the 6 benefits. For more details and examples, see Publication 17 and Publication 501, Exemption Standard Deductions and Filing Information. Yun nga, So, kung halimbawa hindi mo i-claim, pwede ka naman mag-claim, Step nangyayari to, halimbawa nasa isang bubong, parehas pang active yung lola or yung grandparents, pwede silang parehas na mag-claim. So, kung hindi i-claim ng parent, sila yung first priority, kumbaga, sa order. Kung hindi i-claim ng parent, yung grandparents pwedeng mag-claim. Pwede nilang i-claim yung apo nila as qualifying child. Again, provided na na-satisfy yung lahat ng conditions para ma-treat as qualifying child. Okay, example. Mary and her 3-year-old daughter Jane lived with Mary's mother, Dorothy, all year. Mary is 25 years old, unmarried, ayan, nakatira sa, magkakasama pa sila, and has an AGI of $19,000. Dorothy has an AGI of 25,000. So, mas mataas yung AGI ng nanay, nanay ni Mary, kaysa sa kanya. Okay? Yung tatay naman ni Jane, yung apo, bali yung apo ni Dorothy or yung anak ni Mary, okay, didn't live with Mary or Jane. No? So hindi kumbaga walang pakialam yung tatay. Okay? And Mary has not signed form 8332. Na mamaya pakita ko yung example ng form 8332. Parang ano siya, waiver. Nire-release mo yung karapatan mo para yung halimbawa, magkahiwalay nga kayo, yung husband or yung wife mo, pwedeng i-claim yung anak na as dependent. Okay? So ano to? This example na to, Jane is a qualifying child of both Mary and Dorothy because she meets the relationship, age, residency, support, and joint return test for both Mary and Dorothy. No? So parehas pwede, no? Si Dorothy tsaka si Mary pwedeng i-claim nila si Jane. However, only one of them can claim. Hindi po pwedeng parehas nilang i-claim. Double dip yun. Jane isn't qualifying child for anyone else including her father. So, kumbaga, yun na, parehas silang pwedeng mag-claim. Mary agreed to let her mother claim Jane. This means Dorothy can claim Jane as a qualifying child for all of the 5 tax benefits listed earlier. If the mother qualifies for each of those benefits, and if Mary doesn't claim Jane as a qualifying child for any of those benefits. So, kumbaga parang, sige, pinaubaya na niya, yung nanay na niya, o yung lola ni Mary, no? Lola ni Jane. No? Pwede siyang i-claim as dependent. However, if Mary and Dorothy can't agree, ito na, minsan meron mga hindi pagkakasundo. No? If Mary and Dorothy can't agree, only Mary will be allowed to claim in order of priority. Kumbaga, since parent, siya yung nanay, siya yung may mas karapatan, no? Mas may karapatan siyang i-claim, no? Si Jane as qualifying child. Pero kung napag-usapan naman, ayun, kumbaga kung okay naman kay Mary, walang problema, no? Pwedeng i-claim ni Dorothy yung anak niya as dependent. Okay? So, ito naman yung sinasabi kong example kanina ng Form 8332 or revocation of release of claim for exemption for a child by custodial parent. Kumbaga doon sa example natin, si Mary, siya yung custodial parent ni Jane. So, wari mo yung, kunyari, yung strange husband niya or yung father ni Jane magke-claim, no? Kung papabayaan ni Mary na i-claim ng tatay si Jane, no, kahit na siya yung custodial parent at dahil siya yung custodial parent, kailangan kumbaga fill up and mag-file siya nitong form 8332. Parang katibayan na kumbaga parang wini-waive ko, no, hinahayaan ko yung tatay, no, ni Jane na siya yung mag-claim dun sa anak niya, which is si Jane, as dependent. Okay? So, yan yun. Form 8332. Okay. Release of certain tax benefits revoked. A custodial parent who has revoked his or her previous release of claim to certain tax benefits for a child must attach a copy of the revocation to his or her return. For the revocation to be effective for the current tax year, the custodial parent must have given or made reasonable efforts to give written notice of the revocation to the non-custodial parent in the prior tax year or earlier year. So again, guys, if you want to know more about Form 8332, yan, pwede kayong pumunta sa IRS. May instructions naman doon kung ano yung kailangan gawin. Just be aware lang na hindi po pwedeng, sige, ikaw na. No, kailangan may formality. No, kailangan mag-fill out nitong Form 8332. Okay? So, okay, na-touch na natin qualifying child. No? So, punta naman tayo, qualifying relatives. Okay? A person is not a qualifying child. No? So, wala sa nabanggit. No? Hindi mo anak, kumbaga hindi siya child, stepchild, foster child, brother, sister, stepbrother, stepsister, half-brother, half-sister. No? Kung hindi siya sa nabanggit, meron pa naman. No, kumbaga may category pa rin doon. Ito na yan, qualifying relatives. Okay? A person is not a qualifying child may still qualify as a dependent under the rules of qualifying relatives. Even an individual who is not a family member can be a qualifying relative. Unlike a qualifying child, a qualifying relative can be any age. No? Kasi kanina may age restrictions tayo, di ba? Ano yung age restrictions? Kailangan hindi mas matanda sa age 18. Kumbaga dapat or 24, hindi lalampas ng 24, no? Unless full-time student or walang age kung permanently or totally disabled. Sa qualifying relative, no, hindi nagmamatter ano yung age. Okay, so that's number one difference, no? The tests for qualifying relative are applied only when the tests for qualifying child are not met. No? So, yung kaninang apat na test. Pero kailangan guys, okay, malito ha, kailangan lahat ng qualifying relative, qualifying dependent, whether qualifying child or qualifying relative, kailangan ma-meet yung 3 primary test. Na yung DJC natin kanina, no? Yung dependent taxpayer test, joint return test, citizenship or residency test. Kailangan nyo. Pag doon pa lang sa tatlo na yung bagsak na, hindi na pwede mag-qualify. No? Hindi na pwedeng i-claim as dependent. So, yun yung ibig sabihin ko na primary test. Now, yung sinasabi dito, the tests for qualifying relative are applied only when the tests for qualifying child are not met. No? Yun naman yung kaninang relationship test, age test, na residency test, saka yung support test, saka yung ating tiebreaker test. No? So, kung hindi naman na-satisfy yun, pwede mo pang i-consider, no, as qualifying relative provided na masasatisfy naman yung test, no, para mag-qualify as qualifying relative or relatives. Okay, so qualifying relatives test. Dependents who do not meet the test for qualifying child must meet the slightly different test to be a qualifying relative. Okay. In addition to the dependent taxpayer test, joint return, and citizen or resident test, no, yung kanina, yung primary test, there are 4 additional tests that must be met for a person to be a qualifying relative. So number 1, not a qualifying child test. No? So, kung pumasa siya doon, hindi siya qualifying relative. Qualifying child ang definition natin sa kanya. Okay? Member of household or relationship test, gross income test, and support test. Okay. Not a qualifying child test. If a child is a qualifying child for any other taxpayer, he or she cannot, no, nakabold yan, not, be also a qualifying relative of another taxpayer. A taxpayer cannot claim an individual who can be claimed as dependent on another tax return. Hindi po pwede, kumbaga kung sino-sino na lang lahat kayo, nag-claim kayo dun sa taong yon as dependent. No? So pag na-claim na siya as dependent in another return or by another taxpayer, hindi na po pwede. Okay? However, meron namang exception. However, there's an exception to this statement. A child may qualify as the taxpayer's dependent under the test for qualifying relative, even if that child is the qualifying child of another taxpayer. This is allowed only when the child's parent or other person for whom the child is a qualifying child is not required to file an income tax return and either does not file a return or only files to get a refund of income tax withheld or estimated tax paid. So, kumbaga parang nasa pag-uusap naman yan. Pwede siya, halimbawa, qualified siya na ma-claim as a qualifying child, no? Pero, kumbaga, ginawa naman, kumbaga parang yung taxpayer na yon hindi naman magpo-file ng tax return. So, even if, kumbaga, qualifying child siya doon, pwede pa naman, no, na ma-claim ng ibang taxpayer. Provided na, again, ma-satisfy din tong conditions na to. Okay? Example, Tatis lived with his girlfriend Eva and her 2 children all the years in his home. Eva is not required to file and does not file a tax return this year. Eva and her 2 children pass the not qualifying child test to be Todd's qualifying relatives. If Todd meets all the other tests, Eva and her 2 children are qualifying relatives. Eva and Todd's relationship does not violate any local law. So, pwede naman. Okay? So, kailangan lang maintindihan nyo talaga yung rule kung kailan mag-a-apply. Okay. Ano naman yung member of household relationship test? So, another test to be satisfied, no, para ma-considered as qualifying relative. To meet this test, the person must either, number one, live as a member of the taxpayer's household all year or be related to the taxpayer in one of the following ways. Ito naman, one of the following ways. Hindi naman kailangan lahat. Okay? Kahit isa lang dito, pwede. So, child, stepchild, foster child, or descendant of any of them. Okay? Brother, sister, half-brother, half-sister, stepbrother, or stepsister. Okay? Pwede yung mga, kasi di ba kanina binanggit natin, itong mga to, pwede as qualifying child. Paano napunta ngayon dito yan, qualifying relative? Kung halimbawa yung child, stepchild, foster child, or descendant of any of them, 20 years old na, hindi siya full-time student. So, hindi na siya magko-qualify as qualifying child. But, yun nga, no, di ba kanina sinabi natin sa qualifying relative, hindi problema ang edad. No? So, kung hindi siya nag-qualify, kasi that's the number one condition, di ba, dun sa qualifying relative, hindi siya mag-qualify as qualifying child. So, kahit na anak siya, stepchild, foster child, or descendant of any of them, no, kung di niya na-satisfy yung rule dun sa qualifying child, halimbawa, yun nga, sa edad, no, nagkataon, 20 years old na siya, 21 years old na, tapos hindi full-time student, no, hindi na siya qualified as a qualifying child. Pero, pwede siya mag-qualify as a qualifying relative. Okay? So again, be related to the taxpayer in one of the following ways. Child, stepchild, foster child, or a descendant of any of them. Brother, sister, half-brother, half-sister, stepbrother, or stepsister. Father, mother, grandparent, or other direct ancestor, but not foster parent. Huwag kayong malito dito guys ha. Yung kanina foster child. Ito foster parent. So hindi pwede pagka foster parent. Okay? Stepfather or stepmother. Son or daughter of the taxpayer's brother or sister. So yung nephew, mga pamapamangkin, no? Son or daughter of the taxpayer's half-brother or half-sister. Brother or sister of the taxpayer's father or mother, no? Sila auntie, sila tito, tita, uncle or aunt, yan. Son-in-law, daughter-in-law, father-in-law, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, or sister-in-law. So yan, qualified sila, no? Member of household or relationship test. So kung any of the following nabanggit na satisfy, can qualify as a qualifying relative. Okay, ito muna. Kailangan ingat din tayo. So, please take note that an adopted child is treated as the taxpayer's own child for the purposes of relationships described above. For example, an adopted brother or sister is a brother or sister of the taxpayer. An adopted child includes a child who was lawfully placed with the person for legal adoption. Ito pa. Any of those relationships that were established by marriage are not ended by death or divorce. Anong ibig sabihin ba niyan? Pari mo, mag-asawa kayo, no? Yung asawa mo, syempre meron kang in-laws. So, kiniklaim nyo dati as dependents yung in-laws nyo na yon. Now, nagkataon, namatay na yung asawa mo, no? So, yung, kumbaga, siya yung may talagang, siya yung biological son, no? Nung in-laws mo. So, kumbaga, it doesn't end there. Kahit na namatay na yung asawa mo, na since kiniklaim mo yung parents or yung mga in-laws nyo as dependent, hindi nagtatapos yun sa death or divorce. So, pwede mo pa rin i-continue, no? Yung pagkiklaim. Again, for as long as nasa-satisfy yung conditions or yung test ng qualifying relative. Okay? An unrelated person who live with the taxpayer for the entire year can also meet the member of household or relationship test. If the relationship violates local laws, this test is not met. Okay? For example, if the taxpayer state prohibits cohabitation, then that person cannot be claimed, even if all of the criteria are met. So sometimes merong pakialam yung state. No? So, may mga cases na ganon. So, depende sa state. Okay? Example. Okay, mag-example tayo. Susan and Ted are married and file a joint return. They supported Ted's parents throughout the tax year. Even though Ted's parents do not live with Ted and Susan, Ted's parents meet the member of household relationship test. Yun naman yung binanggit ko dati dun sa kabilang video na it doesn't always follow na kailangan nakatira physically sa bahay. No? Particularly sa mga parents. Kasi syempre, yung mga parents, may sarili din bahay ang mga yan. Or sometimes nasa mga retirement or nursing homes. No? So pagka ganun, kahit na hindi physically nakatira dun sa bahay ninyo or dun sa bahay ng taxpayer, pwede pa rin na mag-qualify. No? In this case, Ted's parents meet the member of household or relationship test. No? Kasi hodang hindi siya halimbawa nakatira dun sa bahay. Okay? So ito, tandaan nyo lang guys, nilagay ko dito as note. No? A person is still considered living with the taxpayer as a member of the household during the periods when that person or the taxpayer is temporarily absent due to special circumstances. No? Yun nga, may sakit, yan, such as illness, education, business, vacation, military service, and placement in nursing home. Cousins can meet the relationship test for qualifying relative only if they live with the taxpayer for the entire tax year. No? So kahit nakadugo mo yan, kung hindi nakatira sa inyo, hindi po pwede. Okay? Qualifying relatives can be unrelated as long as they live with the taxpayer all year. Ito lang guys, hindi naman lahat ng nakatira sa bahay nyo po pwede. Okay, ang exemption dito, ito. A taxpayer may not claim a housekeeper or other household employee as dependent. No? Hindi naman lahat. No? So ito specifically minention. Hindi po pwede, no? Cannot, no? Claim a housekeeper or other household employee as dependent. Okay? Example uli natin. Okay, pangalawa, Mary is a live-in nanny for Jack and Jane in exchange for room and board for the entire year. Mary does not meet the test for a qualifying relative. Okay? So, hindi siya po pwede. Okay? Ito naman, gross income test. Again, kailangan to determine whether that person is a qualifying or can qualify as a qualifying relative. Okay? So, gross income test. Okay? Define muna natin, ano ba yung gross income? Okay? Gross income is all income in the form of money, property, and services that is not exempt from tax. To meet the gross income test, the qualifying relative cannot earn more than the deemed exemption, which is $4,400 for this 2022 tax year. Okay, so example, Joe is 65 years old and lives with his son and daughter-in-law. Okay, so pasok siya dun sa relationship, diba? But Joe's taxable pension income for the year was $10,000. Ito na. No, ang limit lang is $4,400. No, so since kumita si Joe ng $10,000, no, na hindi na niya na-meet yung gross income test, which is sinet lang at $4,400. So, therefore, Joe is not qualified relative because his income exceeds, yan, sobra-sobra na, exceeds the threshold amount. Okay? Support test. Okay, to meet this test, the taxpayer must have provided more than 50% of the person's total support for the tax year. Note that this support test is different from the one for a qualifying child, which tests whether the child provided more than half of their own support. So kanina, di ba, dinidetermine natin yung bang bata, kahit na kumita siya, no, in our example, halimbawa, meron siyang commercial, ng bata siya, no, kumita siya, pero yung pera, hindi niya ginamit for his or her own support. Kumbaga, nilagay ng parents sa trust fund or educational fund, ganyan. No? So, hindi niya ginamit for his or her own support. So, pwede yun. Pwede pa rin ma-qualify as qualifying child. Ito naman iba. Kumbaga, ikaw yung nagsusupport, no? So, to meet this test, the taxpayer must provided more than 50%. No? Kailangan ikaw yung sumusuporta dun sa ikiklaim mo na dependent. Okay? Example, Sherry's father received $2,700 from Social Security but put $300 of it in savings account and spent only $2,400 for his own support. Sherry spent $2,600 of her income for his support, so she has provided over half of his support. So yung total na kinikita nung father niya is 2,700. So may nakiklaim siya na kumbaga parang in effect pension, no, from Social Security, no? Pero hindi lahat na yung ginamit niya for his own support. Kumbaga, ang ginamit lang niya is 2,400. Yung 300 sinave niya. Eh, ang ginastos ni Sherry, 2,600. So, 2,600, mas malaki sa 2,400. So, more than 50%, no, yung shoulder ni Sherry. Therefore, yun nga, since mas malaki yung kay Sherry, she provided over half of his father's support. Therefore, pwede niyang i-claim yung tatay niya, no, as a qualifying relative. Okay? Example number two. Steve provided $4,000 toward his mother's support during the year. His mother had non-taxable Social Security benefit payments of $4,800 and tax-exempt interest of $800. She used all of this for her support. Steve's mother provided more than half of her total support of $9,600. Therefore, Steve cannot claim his mother as dependent. No? Kasi 4,000 lang yung binigay ni Steve. Ang total na ginastos ng parent niya or ng mother niya for her own support is 9,600. No? So, kailangan ma-meet mo more than 50%, no, of the person's total support. So, guys, critical to. Again, para malaman mo kung qualifying relative siya or hindi. No? Meron din, again, you can go back dun sa worksheet. And kasama yan, no? Sa real scenario, yan yung, kumbaga, madedetermine mo yan sa pagtatanong, no? Sa kumbaga, may mga probing questions, sa pagkausap mo dun sa client, no? Para ma-establish mo, ano ba to? Pwede ba siya mag-qualify, no? As qualifying relative. No, hindi pwedeng sinabi lang ni client, no? Sometimes kumbaga parang kailangan ma-establish natin na yes, sinusuportahan ko to, no? Kasi lalo na do sa mga magki-claim ng mga credits, guys, no? Do sa ibang topic di-discuss natin, meron yung parang due diligence na checklist, no, yung sa preparer pag may mga credits, and kailangan talagang mag-perform tayo ng due diligence, no? Hindi lang basta nasabi ng client. Okay? So, multiple support agreement. Ano naman to? Sometimes, no one provided more than half the support of a person. No? Lalo na minsan, yung magkakapatid, ganyan, nagsishare sila ng mga gastos. Multiple support means the two or more people who could claim the person as dependent, except for the support test, together provided more than half of the dependent support. In this situation, the individual should provide more than 10% of the person's total support, and who meet the other test for qualifying relative can agree that one of them will claim the person as dependent for any applicable tax benefit. Again, ang keyword dito, guys, tricky ang mga questions sa exam. Minsan pag kinumpute mo, lalo na sa ganito, yung multiple support agreement, pag kinumpute mo, saktong-saktong 10%. So kung hindi mo alam na kailangan pala more than 10%, mamamali ka. So, kailangan at least 10.1, ganyan, or 11%, no, para ma-consider. No? So, ingat kayo dun sa mga ganitong klase na mga questions. No? Ang kailangan, pag may multiple support agreement, more than 10%. Okay? The taxpayer claiming the dependent must file Form 2120 or the multiple support declaration or similar statement with the tax return. Okay? So, the other taxpayers providing over 10% of the person's support must provide a written and signed statement agreeing not to claim the dependent for the year. The person who claims the dependent must keep a copy of this written statement as a record. A list of the statement requirements can be found in Form 2020 instructions. So, yan yung example, guys, ng Form 2120. Okay, multiple support declaration. Again, kung may mga ganito kayong situation, ang kailangan yung tandaan din dyan, ayan, for record keeping, kailangan may kopya kayo. At saka kailangan, ayan, nakalagay, written and signed statement. Hindi po pwedeng over the phone, nagkatalo kayo. Hindi, no? Kasi eventually, later on, baka ma-audit ng IRS, ganyan, hanapin to, tapos wala. No? Kumbaga parang, o kaya, lahat pala nag-claim. No? So, kailangan merong written and signed statement agreeing not to claim para malinaw yung usapan. No? Hindi po pwedeng ano lang, over the phone lang. No? Kailangan written and signed. Nag-a-agree. Okay? So, again, signed Form 2120. Okay? Okay, note. Okay? Multiple support agreements apply only to qualifying relative. Wala yan sa qualifying child. Okay? If you can claim a person as a dependent only because of multiple support agreement, that person isn't a qualifying person or for head of household status. Kasi di ba dito pwedeng kahit more than 10% pwede na. Ano ba yung rule natin doon sa head of household? Kailangan more than 50%. So again, pwede mo siyang i-claim as dependent, as a qualifying relative for other credits or other benefits, kumbaga. Pero hindi mo siya pwedeng i-claim, kumbaga, para maging head of household yung filing status mo. So, yun lang yung medyo nakakalito dun, guys. So, kailangan tandaan nyo, kailan ba applicable itong mga rules na to? No, para saan ba siya ginagamit? Kasi po pwedeng, yun nga, yung dependent na yon, makiklaim mo for other credits, no? Yung mga tax credits, ganyan, yung mga earned income tax credits, pero it doesn't necessarily follow na pag pwede mo siyang i-claim as dependent, matic na yun, kung single ka, pwede ka kaagad na head of household. No, so, sa filing status, no, to be able to file, no, for you to file or claim ng head of household status, kailangan masatisfy mo yung conditions naman. No, yung diniscuss natin dun sa unang video natin, no, sa filing status. Example, Fred's father, Charlie, lives with him and receives 27% of his support from Social Security. 40% from Fred, 24% from Charlie's brother Ray, and 9% from one of Charlie's friends. Charlie may be a qualifying relative for either Fred or Ray because they each provide more than 10%. No? More than 10% silang pareho of Charlie's support and together contributed more than 50% towards his support. If they agree that Fred will claim Charlie as dependent, Ray will sign Form 2120 and Fred will attach the form to his tax return. Na? So, kailangan magawa ng maayos para maging valid. Okay? Okay, meron tayong tinatawag ng mga special rules. No? Special rule for divorce or for children of divorced or separated parents or parents who lived apart. In most cases, the child is the qualifying child of the custodial parent. No? However, a child will be treated as a qualifying child or qualifying relative of his or her non-custodial parent if all of the following conditions apply. Number one, parents are divorced or legally separated under the divorce or separate maintenance decrees or written separation agreements. Lived apart at all times during the last 6 months of the year, whether or not they are or were married. The child received over half of his or her support for the year from the parents. No, may multiple support agreement. Multiple support agreement rules does not apply. Okay, the child was in custody of one or both parents for more than half the year. The custodial parent signs a written declaration, yung Form 8332 natin kanina, or similar statement that he or she will not claim the child as dependent for the year, and the non-custodial parent attaches this declaration to his or her return. If the degree of agreement went into effect after 1984 and before 2009, the non-custodial parent may be able to attach certain pages from the decree or agreement instead of Form 8332. For pre-1985 decree or agreement, see publication 17. Yan. Andun naman guys, no? Again, if you want to know more on the details, marami din silang mga examples doon, you can visit or you can check publication 17. This special rule is the exception to number 1, residency test for qualifying child and support test for qualifying relative. Okay? So we talked about custodial parent or nabanggit yung custodial parent. Sino ba yung custodial parent? From the word custody, no? Custodial. Siya yung mas kasama, siya yung sa kanya nakatira basically, no? So the custodial parent is the parent whom the child lived for the greater number of nights during the year. The other parent is the non-custodial parent. If the parents divorced or separated during the year and the child lived with both parents before the separation, the custodial parent is the one with whom the child lived for the greater number of nights during the rest of the year. A child is treated as living with a parent for a night if the child sleeps at the parent's home, whether or not the parent is present. In the company of the parent when the child does not sleep at the parent's home. For example, the parent and child are on a vacation together. So, counted din yun, guys, no? Sa pag-count ng, kumbaga yung length of stay, kung kailan sila, yung how many days silang magkasama, gano'ng katagal silang magkasama. So, counted yon. Okay, example. Chloe has one child, Timmy, and is divorced. During the tax year, Timmy lived with Chloe 210 nights and with his father 155 nights. So Chloe is the custodial parent, no? Because Timmy lived with her more nights during the year. Kasi minsan guys sa ibang bansa, sa US, talagang nagtatalo kung sino, no? Talagang maabot pa yan sa korte para ma-determine sino ba ang rightful na custodial parent. So, isa sa mga dinidetermine nila yan or factor nila sa pag-determine yan, yung length of stay nga. So, in this case, mas madaming araw na kasama, no? Yung nanay kaysa dun sa tatay. So, therefore, yung nanay ang custodial parent. Okay? If the child live with each parent for an equal number of nights during the year, the custodial parent is the parent with a higher adjusted gross income. So, going back dun sa tiebreaker test natin kanina, di ba? So, kung pareha sila, so kung sino mas mataas ang income or AGI, adjusted gross income, siya yung panalo. Siya yung custodial parent na lalabas. Okay. Ito na tayo. So, again, for this topic, importante na malaman nyo yung primary test. Kumbaga, dito pa lang, guys, ma-determine nyo na kung magko-qualify yung tao as dependent or hindi. So, napaka-importante na alam nyo ano yung primary test. Kumbaga dito pa lang tapos na ang boxing. Pag hindi nag-qualify, huwag nyo na ituloy. No? Hindi na siya magko-qualify as dependent. So, primary test, tatlo lang. Dependent taxpayer test, joint return test, citizenship or residency test. So, again, parang DJC. Para madali. No? Primary test, DJC. Now, para mag-qualify as qualifying child, no, kailangan ma-satisfy yung ano naman, no, yung rules in addition to these three, no? So sa qualifying child nandun yung relationship test, no, age test, citizenship test, residency test kumbaga, and then yung support test. Tsaka yung tiebreaker test kung sakali mang hindi na kumbaga parang lahat na yun pwedeng 1 or 2 person magki-claim dun sa child. No? So, kailangan magkaroon ng tiebreaker test. Then, qualifying relative, syempre, pwede naman. No? Pwede pa naman mag-qualify as a dependent kahit na hindi ka pumasa or hindi pumasa as qualifying child. May iba pa namang test na pwedeng isatisfy to be considered as qualifying relative. So, napaka-importante nito guys sa pagpe-prepare ng tax return in real life at saka sa preparation nyo sa tax, sa preparation nyo for the special enrollment exam. No? So, I hope, again, nandito na tayo sa end ng session natin. Again, I hope I was able to impart something na sana may natutunan kayo on this session and I hope to see you sa susunod natin na mga videos pa. Ang lagi ko sinasabi, no, towards the end, makikisuyo lang for those na bago pa lang sa channel natin. Please don't forget to subscribe, no, and share din itong mga and share din to sa mga friends, no, colleagues, peers. Ayan, meron din tayong website, no, yung Enrolled Agents Philippines. Doon namin ilalagay yung mismong mga materials, no, kino-convert namin to sa downloadable na PDF para meron kayong reference para mas madali, no, yung pag-aaral ninyo. So, meron din tayong Facebook group, no, yung Enrolled Agents Academy. Kung meron kayong mga questions or tawag dito, meron mga sections na hindi ganun kalinaw pa or may further questions kayo, please feel free, no, na magtanong dun sa group natin. And I will be more than willing to answer them for you. Okay? So, yun lang guys. May LinkedIn, we forgot, no? May LinkedIn din ako, connect tayo, usap tayo. So, again, maraming salamat sa oras ninyo, no? Sa panonood ninyo dito sa video natin na to. And I really hope to see you soon sa mga susunod pa nating episode. Maraming salamat. Enjoy the rest of the day. God bless. Thank you.